Alrighty, welcome viewers. This is the Podfather. This is our first episode with an official name. So I am Carson Newman.
Tegan Ritter.
And Matthew Fisher.
So today we are going to be talking about a movie called The Beasts of the Southern Wild. And this movie is about a young girl who lives with her ill father in a place that is cut off from most of society. And it has a lot to say, and it truly makes the viewer question the difference between reality and imagination.
Well, I'll start us off. So I saw this article on cliffnotes.com, and it explains how monsters are more than just sheer fright, and they reflect society's sorrows, and they allow us to have a medium to like deconstruct and explore hidden phobias and desires. So I was going to ask, what do you guys think the oryx, which are those giant hog things, what do you think they represent in this film?
I think it's like multiple representations with them. One part, I think they represent the effects of climate change because we see them going through and destroying places. And then the whole reason that they are there is because climate change and the ice melting, which set them free. So I think they represent the effects of like global warming and stuff like that. But I also think they represent the people of the bathtub. And we see that with Hush Puppy's statement, "You're my friends now," kind of at the end of the movie, and it's they're the beasts of the southern wild, but so are the people of the bathtub, and they're just surviving.
Yeah, I would say I completely agree with Matthew, and I think they have a little more to say as well. I think, like, the biggest representation is, like, the fear of time passing and, like, the fear of growing up, at least for Hush Puppy, because you could see like it took a little bit of time throughout the movie for the wild hogs or what are they called?
The oryx.
The oryx. It took a while for them to get to Hush Puppy, and like over that course of time, her father was dying, and she had the fear of growing up and being completely independent, and like when the oryx finally reached her, she pretty much faced her fears, and like to me that represented that like if you face your fears you can do anything.
Yeah, I really agree with you guys, especially with like yours about the climate change thing, because they definitely do represent that. But and I mainly felt that, like what Carson said, they represented her fears of having to live by herself and the fears of being alone after her father's death. And then I feel like at the end of the film, when she like confronts them and like stands her ground, it's her confronting the fact that she's not afraid anymore, and that she's come to terms with her father passing or about to be passing.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I got out of it as well.
All right, my question comes from evsco.com, and it's on the topic of cultural and structural assimilation, which is when a minority group conjoins with a dominant group, and then they have like their culture, and eventually the theory is that over time their culture dissipates to where they're like you can't tell the difference between them and the majority group. But my question was, do you think the people of the bathtub could have joined society, and would they have been better off and or happier if they integrated with the rest of the society, and why?
So I think that if they integrated with society they obviously would have been a lot safer, and they wouldn't have had to deal with the poverty that they had to, but I don't think that they would be happier. And like their whole like deal is that they don't conform to like the normality of society. And I don't think they would be happier, but they would definitely be safer, especially like the little ones. So
Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like what you said too, they would definitely be safer, but it would take away the entirety of what makes them them. Their whole lives are based around doing this survival thing and living off what they can, living off the land. And if they were part of society, that would be taken away from them, then they would just have nothing.
Yeah, I think so too. I think they would be better off if they did join society, but I feel like their culture wouldn't allow it. Like they wouldn't ever consider joining with society. but I feel like if they did, they might end up happier if they could like actually accepted joining society and then maintained their culture within like their own group.
Mhm.
Alrighty. So my question comes from a review by Roger Ebert. And so it suggests that when we look at the bathtub, it already feels like a post-apocalyptic like place from the beginning of the film. And I say that because of like they're cut off from society and they're living off of like scraps from like actual civilization to survive. And so it feels like it represents a world after collapse and not before collapse, like even before the hurricane struck. So this film also suggests a clear blur between imagination and reality, and we see that through Hush Puppy and her imaginations of the oryx. So my question is, do you think this film shows a real natural disaster, being the hurricane, or is it more about how Hush Puppy interprets scary events? So, like, do you think that the hurricane was real, or the bathtub? Do you think that was real, or do you think it was like just an interpretation of Hush Puppy's imagination?
I feel like it could be almost both at the same time. I feel like the weather events could have been real, but like the entirety of the bathtub and most of the events that happen in the story, they feel like a child's imagination because a lot of children, it's like a trauma response too. Like her father is dying, her friends are going away. She basically has nobody, and she has no mother, and she's like her brain is trying to cope with all of this, and she's not educated, so she doesn't understand a whole lot. So I feel like a lot of the events, especially like the Oryx, I feel like they're just her brain trying to cope with the reality of the situation she's in.
Yeah, I interpreted the bathtub more as a underdeveloped civilization than a post-apocalyptic one. But I think that, like Tegan said, it could have been a combination of imagination and reality. Like maybe it was more dramatized to show her fears and her struggles with the weather and the what are they called?
Oryx.
Oryx. I think the oryx might have been just her imagination, though.
Yeah, I'd have to say I agree with Tegan. I think like a lot of it was just her imagination trying to cope, and like it was literally called the bathtub, and I feel like that name comes from Hush Puppy's imagination because that's like if you think of a giant place filled with water up to the tree, like the tree line. I mean, if I was a little kid, like I would probably call it a bathtub too. But um, so I think the storm and the illness of her father and the poverty of the bathtub is like all real, and I just think we see them through Hush Puppy's imagination. So it's like a little bit of both. Like all these events are actually happening, but it's all being represented through Hush Puppy's imagination.
Like a more like fantasy dramatized
Yeah,
sort of way where it
Yeah,
seems less harsh.
because how old was Hush Puppy?
I think she was like 6 to 8.
I
Yeah,
think she was
so
8.
I think that like the entirety of the movie is just like the representation of Hush Puppy's imagination and how she's coping with the events that are happening in her life.
Before we end the episode, I want to ask about Wink's parenting. How did you guys
Mm.
interpret that?
Oh goodness. I think, he wasn't necessarily the best father, but at the same time, he was dying. And I think at the end of the day, it was tough love because he had to prepare Hush Puppy for the worst. He wasn't trying to protect her from a bad environment. He was preparing her to endure a bad environment. So I I don't think it was necessarily the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, I feel like it was like out of that tough love. You can tell that in a lot of these parts he actually cares about her. Like he gets worried about her, but he doesn't show it in like a typical way. He has to have that. like cold and like hard exterior and like demeanor for her because he doesn't want her to get so attached because like her mother already left them. He doesn't want her to become so reliant on him that she can't survive by herself because he knows he's going to leave her. He knows he's dying.
Yeah, it is definitely tough love and preparation for the future, and I think that comes from their culture because we see like the scene where she opens the crab with her hands. Everyone's like cheering her on to do it, and then the scenes where like she's flexing her muscles, and I think he gets worked up too much, like when he threw the table, and I think that all stems from their culture, and their culture has tough parenting in preparation for the future.
Yeah. Okay. Any final like what are you guys' final thoughts on this movie? Like, did you like it or anything else you want to bring up?
I really enjoyed this movie. I enjoyed what it had to say about like global warming and then also society.
I just think like this movie is very hard to interpret on the first watch. So like you really have to dive in, but I think if you do dive in, it's a good watch.
I This movie was hard for me because I'm more of like a fast-paced movie watcher,
Mm-hmm.
and this movie just doesn't hit as much because this is not my culture. I don't live like this, and I don't experience anything like this. And yeah, like what you said too, it's very hard to interpret. So I'm just kind of sitting there, just taking all the information in, but not really fully understanding it.
Yeah, it's
That's
kind
kind
of
of
hard to
hard.
connect the dots.
Well, for our viewers, I'll make you an offer you can't refuse. Come back and watch our second episode.
Thank you.